Lynn, did you hear me?
It started.
Okay, thank you. I'll call the October 14th, 2021 awards meeting to order. We have a physical quorum represented by Joe Orfano, Stephen Datz, and Sean Connor, which is a delegate for High Vu. We also have Todd Skinner filling in as a delegate for Ricky Erickson, and Jordan Pope filling in as a delegate for Laura Dutton, joining us via WebEx. We also have a new person joining us this morning, our Chief Legal Officer representing the Office of General Counsel, Regina Ross. And Budget is represented by Lori Whitmer. So before we begin reviewing today's agenda, I'll note that there isn't anyone physically present for public comment. Lynn, did you receive any public comment via email?
No. No public comments.
This? Yes.
Okay.
All right. I'll pause for a moment for callers joining us via WebEx to unmute and speak up. All right. Hearing no comments, we'll proceed with today's regular agenda. On today's agenda, we have items 1 through 8 that have been reviewed by Procurement and Budget. These items are now ready to be reviewed by the Awards Committee. Beginning with item 1, representing the minutes from the September 30th, 2021 Awards Committee meeting. Are there any comments or corrections to be discussed? Okay, may I get a motion to approve award item 1, representing the minutes from the September 30th, 2021 Awards Committee meeting?
Joe Orfano.
Okay, I'm going with the motion from Joe and a second from Todd Skinner. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed? Minutes are approved as presented. I will pass it over to Jenny McCollum, our Chief Procurement Officer, to walk us through each of the remaining items before we ask for a motion.
Thank you. Through the chair. Todd, it's not fair, I know, on the WebEx, you're a little delayed, so you have to be quick. I'll start with award number 2. This is a bid for construction services for the Arlington East Water Reclamation Facility Secondary MMC Replacement Project. Williams Industrial Services, LLC, is our recommended awardee in the amount of $1,831,611.54. We are expected to have this project completed around March of 2023. And I will just make a note that we have a JSAB requirement of 12% on this. And RZ Services Group may be a new JSAB. If not, we have recently just awarded them something. So that is wonderful. We received 5 bids, and the award amount is approximately 24% lower than our engineer estimate. And when we dug into that award amount, we saw that Williams is going to self-perform some of the electrical work, which lowers, the cost to JEA, not subbing that out. And when we compare it to other projects, we feel comfortable moving forward with this. So I will ask the committee if there are any questions or comments on award number 2.
Jenny, this is Stephen. I'm wondering if the business could just speak to, you mentioned that Williams Industrial is self-performing electrical work, but it was like a $580,000 reduction. Was that limited just to electrical work, or was it something else?
Do we have someone from the business that can answer that? I think that's probably the bulk of it, but there's likely some other things in there that came in lower than what the estimate was.
Yes, Danny, it's Brian Phillips. There were some additional items that did come in lower. Not only is it electrical work, it's also some updates to the electrical building to bring it up to current standards. And there were items contained within that were also lower than the other bids. But the majority of it is in the electrical area, and it's mostly due to the self-performing. And we did contact Williams and get in touch with them and ask them about that. and they stood by their bid.
All right, so you're comfortable with the quality of work and everything that's in scope?
Yes.
All right.
I'll note on this one too that we received 5 bids, but we did disqualify one of the bidders for not being on our, I believe it was one of our RBL lists, so our responsible bidders list was our minimum qual. So if there aren't any other questions, I'll pass it back to you, Stephen.
Thanks, Jenny. May I get a motion to approve award item 2?
Jordan Pope, move.
Jordan, was that you?
Yes.
Okay, all right. And a second?
Sean Connor, second.
Thank you, Sean. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed? Motion is adopted. We have a motion from Jordan Pope and a second from Sean Connor. All right, Jenny, I'll pass it back over to you for award 3.
Thank you. Through the chair, award number 3, just as a quick note, your packet might be a little bit different than what you see on the screen. We've made 2 updates to this award this morning. So the type of award request, typically we would put miscellaneous when it's something like a developer agreement or a procurement directive, something outside of our norm. But we went ahead and updated this one to show procurement directive, and that matches the P code. So a little bit easier for you guys to find when you're cross-referencing the P code for this award. And we also updated the begin date. There was an error on that. It had stated August of 2021, and so we updated it to show that we'll start moving forward as soon as the awards committee approves. But this is for a Nassau County land sale. It's about 10 acres of JEA real property to Nassau County, Florida, and it's for the future William Burgess right-of-way extension. The award amount is $306,840. And as we stated, this is going through the real estate procurement directive, and as a note, all awards committee approvals are required for purchases and sales of $50,000 to $500,000. So that is why you all are seeing this. Nassau County has a need for this property. The property is part of a larger, approximately 422 acre site that is sometimes informally referred to as the Yulee outfall parcel. The proposed acquisition has been reviewed by the appropriate internal planning, construction, environmental, and joint projects groups. When we did our current appraisal is about $30,000 per acre. So that is how we came to the award total, and Nassau County has agreed to pay that subject to the approval of their Board of Commissioners. So I will pause there and see if you guys have any questions on the sale of this property. All right, I will pass it back to you, Stephen.
Thank you, Jenny. May I get a motion to approve award item 3?
Sean Connor, so moved. Joe Orfano, second.
Thank you. We have a motion from Sean Connor, second from Joe Alfano. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion is adopted. Pass it back over to you, Jenny, to present award item 4.
Thank you. Through the chair, award number 4 is a proposal. This is for engineering services for the Southside Integrated Piping System, which we refer to as SIPS, Greenland, Southside Boulevard, Deerwood 3, to Greenland, Water, and Davis Gate Parkway to R.G. Skinner, and these are reclaimed water projects. Mott McDonald, Florida, LLC is the recommended awardee in the amount of $2,640,697. This project is expected to be completed in March of 2026. So this is just the beginning through the engineering portion. There was a 5% evaluated criteria for JSEB, and it looks like we are landing at about 15%. That is a great win for our small businesses. And we received 3 proposals on this. Mont McDonald is the most qualified to perform the work, and the hourly rates that were negotiated are the same as previous contracts and deemed reasonable. When we look at the engineering design fee, it is approximately 40% or 42% lower than what JEA had estimated. And so just some background, the JEA estimate was based off of a percentage of the construction value. So, you know, we've seen those costs go up and, you know, increasingly at a steady pace. However, Mont McDonald had recent design experience in the project footprint area, and so that was able to afford them to be able to reduce costs to JEA just based off of, you know, some knowledge they already had in that area. The original estimate also included 12,000 linear feet of pipeline that has been removed from the project scope. So that gives you a little bit of information as to why there's such a big gap between the award amount and what we originally had estimated. But we've also asked the water group and all the groups to do more recent updates with the things that are going on in the market before we hit the street on these bids. So they are doing that based off of what we're seeing, but we are seeing a lower negotiated rate here than what we originally thought. Do you guys have any questions or comments? And just a reminder, the CC&A is you're picking the most qualified. Nothing with price is being submitted. We negotiate the scope and fee on the back end with the most qualified firm. So that can result in some savings as well from the procurement side if we are able to negotiate lower rates that, you know, that they originally proposed, et cetera. So I'll pass it back to you, Stephen.
Thank you, Jenny. May I get a motion to approve award item 4?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you, Todd. And second?
Jordan Pope, second.
Thank you. We have a motion from Todd Skinner, second from Jordan Pope. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed? Motion is adopted. Jenny, I'll pass it back over to you for award item 5.
Thank you. Through the chair, just a reminder when you guys are voting, just say your name before so that it's easier for them to see who is motioning on the WebEx. It's a little bit harder when they're in the room for them to see that. So just a friendly reminder. Award number 5 is an invitation for bid. This is a standard of JEA's, if you will, with using Dell for our laptop and equipment purchases for FY22, but there are multiple resellers that we can bid this to. So we bid it instead of just picking one. We hit the street, and CDW Government LLC is the recommended awardee in the amount of $1,717,247.27. This is a 1-year award, and we have 2 1-year optional renewals. So the approval of this would take us through October 14th of 2022 for all of the purchases. We believe we've captured everything in this award amount, but we are able to still utilize their pricing list with discounts if things come up. We received 3 bids when we went to the street, and I'll just note that CDW had the contract in the past, so they are the incumbent, and they continue to offer a competitive 10 to 24% discount off a list price on Dell equipment. And then the first year support also includes the same contractual discounts on any additional related Dell equipment not specifically listed on our pricing sheet or the workbook when we hit the street. I'll note that the original bid was the totals on our workbook were much lower, but there was some additional information that came after the bid had been received to increase our laptops and our docking stations and our monitors based off additional needs for the new headquarters. So we went back to CDW with the increased quantities to see if they would be willing to reduce any more of their unit prices. They actually were not. They actually needed to, just due to when this bid was received and the way that the market is trending, actually needed to increase some of the laptops by 3.5% and the docking stations 24%. So we ran those numbers. They were still lower than all of the other bids that were received. So we found that reasonable. We also went and checked the state of Florida contract and the Sourcewell contracts, and JEA's pricing still remains favorable to those contracts. We also are on a bit of a timeline constraint with supply chain disruptions. So to make sure that we get all of the equipment in timely and that we're ready for the headquarters, we chose to not rebid and move forward with the bid that we did receive back in August. So I wanted to take a minute to, explain all of that. This one's a little interesting, the way that things kind of transpired after the bids were due, but we still feel like we are getting a great price on this equipment. And I think that when we look at the overall, there's not a lot of comparisons we can do when we upgrade models, but the ones that we could compare, on average, we're actually paying less per laptop than FY21, so that was also a bonus. So I will pause there and ask if you guys have any questions or comments.
This is Todd. I just want to make sure I understand. So the bid amount, the original bid amount was about $800,000, and I guess the award here is $1.7 million. Was that due to the increase in the number of units we were going to purchase?
Yes. So the unit prices, they did shift a little bit, as I explained, but the majority of this increase is due to, we increased our laptop quantity from 350 to 625. So that's a big jump. The docking stations went from 525 to 1280. And we also added 888 Dell monitors that weren't included that we needed for the new headquarters. So kind of a combination of late requirements to the game, but overall the pricing is still competitive based off of the research that we had done.
Right. So after we added that, then we compared the per unit prices, and I think you mentioned that a couple of those increased, but the per unit price was still better than the other two vendors.
It was better than the other two vendors that submitted, and it was also better than the state of Florida pricing and the Sourcewell contract that we benchmarked against.
Okay, thank you. No further questions.
Great question. Thank you. Any other questions? All right, I'll pass it back to you, Stephen.
Thank you, Jenny. May I get a motion to approve award item 5?
Sean Connor, so move.
And a second?
Joe Orfano, second.
Thank you. We have a motion from Sean Connor and a second from Joe Orfano. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion is adopted. Jenny, I'll pass it back over to you for award item 6.
Thank you. Through the chair, award number 6 is a rescind. This award is followed by the next award. They kind of are following each other in a sense that we're rescinding something that we already had brought to the awards committee. So we're going to be deducting that from the contract that you guys already approved and then adding it to another vendor's contract. So these go together. And so I'll walk you through the rescind and why we're rescinding. And then the next award, I won't touch on all of that again. I'll just give you the overview on how we're handling it on the back end. But this is for industrial and lab gas supply. Matheson Tri-State Gas Inc. was the vendor that we originally awarded really the bottle service, if you will, the bulk of the pricing for these services. It's about $2.8 million, and about 180,000 of it we had awarded to Matheson, and that was just for bottle service. You can see, the three companies that we originally awarded it to, and during the RFP process, Matheson is new to JEA. They submitted a bid with caveats to review in regards to the terms and condition prior to contract execution. So to, increase the competition and trying to work with new vendors, we allowed them to submit that. They took, exception to multiple terms, some of which JEA was amenable to waiving, but the ones that we were not open to removing were the background and badging requirements for their bottle service delivery drivers. So JEA viewed that as non-negotiable and believes it's in the best interest to maintain the security and compliance and minimize the risk to JEA and the employees. So we pushed back on that, and Matheson declined to execute the contract after months of negotiation with them. I'll note that we don't typically have a bid bond requirement on services like this. So, there really isn't a lot that we can do on the back end if a supplier decides not to move forward. But we did communicate with them and let them know, kind of the impacts that this has. And since they were new to bidding with JEA, we walked them through that process. I'll just note, post-award negotiations are not that common for us. But again, we were trying to work with a new vendor to try to increase competition. So this award number 6 request is to rescind the bid to Matheson Tri-State Inc. And then the separate award, we will add the scope to the next responsive proposer. Do you guys have any questions or comments?
Jenny, this is Stephen. I'm just wondering if we could list the next most responsive proposer, since it's the next award item. We already know who that is.
Sure. Yeah, in that last paragraph?
Yep.
Okay, let's add that, Lynn, just after the period, or before the period, just add to Airgas, or Argas.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Any other comments or questions?
So Jenny, so what was the difference between the lowest bidder who wouldn't sign the contract and the next lowest bidder that we won with? You may have said it.
So we go over that in the next award, but it was about $56,000 more to move to the next low bid. And it's just that portion of the work. So when we reviewed, and the reason we awarded multiple contracts was we cherry picked the pricing for different services that they would perform and the supplies that they would give us. So they just got a very small portion of the overall contract, which is about $2.8 million. But it was a pretty significant increase if you look at what they originally had bid and what we are moving to, just for that small piece.
And what was their pushback on not getting background checks? They just didn't want to spend the money to do that, or?
Rodney, do you want to jump in? I know you guys were intimately involved in the discussions. I think a lot of it has to do with finding labor is a big issue right now, but I'll let Rodney confirm.
Yeah, they felt for the volume of work, the effort for it, and some of the folks that may be doing their driving might not be able to get access to our facilities. So leave it at they decided not to proceed.
Okay, thank you.
Jenny, it's
You're
Joe.
Mhm.
The amount awarded in the background, on the first, underneath the 181,000 says 280. Obviously, they came in at 181. It's just a little confusing the way that's worded. Wouldn't they have
Yeah.
been awarded the amount, the 181?
So we award to budget, and I'll let Rodney, we had long conversations on this one last time we brought it, and then again.
Yeah.
But Rodney can jump in. So we're looking at unit costs. We're looking at, what we expect over the term of the contract, and this is a 5-year term. So, we're establishing pricing and the unit pricing for the services and the supplies. And then we're looking at the business's budget over the, next 5 years, which is about 2.8, and working through kind of how we want to break up the awards, to the multiple vendors that way. So we won't, if we don't use it all, we won't spend it all, but we break it up in a way that we feel it would be best used based off of historical amounts over the 5-year term.
So the 56,000 you're talking about is the difference between the 181 and the 253. Okay, I see your math.
We'll get into the increase on the next award, so don't confuse the two there.
Yeah. This is Rodney. So just to kind of, when we bid, we're bidding based on the best information that we can get based on historical consumption. So, the business unit bought $300 of this bottle of gas, $300 of that bottle of gas, and we put that into a forecast. Well, there's 50 different types of gases. There's 20, 30 different locations that pull and use the various gases. And so when we forecast, we have the best consumption information at the time. New facilities open up, volumes changes, liquid oxygen comes online, different facilities. So our forecasting is the best information that we can go back and kind of extrapolate what we use today. And the bidders bid based on that, which becomes their bid price. Now, annually, the business units forecast on a business unit basis some bucket of money that they expect to expend on a gas service. So when we award, we just typically award to the budget and not to the bid amount. You'll see that on crane services, heavy hauling, things like that, where it's basically a service that's used across JEA that we're awarding to budgets, and we're using the bids to evaluate, and then whoever the awardee is will use their rate sheets when they actually perform the service. If that kind of helps.
Yeah, it does. Thank you, Rodney.
Yep.
Any other questions? Thank you, Rodney. All right, I'll pass it back to the chair.
Thank you, Jenny. May I get a motion to approve award item 6?
Jordan Pope, motion to approve.
Todd Skinner, second.
Thank you. We have a motion from Jordan Pope and a second from Todd Skinner. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Motion is adopted. Jenny, I'll pass it back over to you for award item 7.
Thank you. Through the chair, award number 7 is a contract increase. So like we previously said, and great discussion on the budget because that is going to come into play on this conversation. So I'll give you some high levels and then I'm going to pass it back to Rodney to kind of walk us through some of those details. But the next most responsive proposer, if you will, was Airgas LLC. And we're recommending that we increase their award amount by $253,000. So if you recall, on the last award, we had awarded Matheson $280,000 to that budget. And for these services since May, we have the businesses have tweaked and reduced their budgets in some of the areas. So we're reducing the overall contract amount that we're adding to Airgas by $27,000, which was a reduction on the certain line items in the budget that allocated to this work. So Rodney, why don't you kind of take us through that and talk about the price increase that we spoke earlier about with Ted, and kind of explain what that looks like over the 5-year term.
All right. So yeah, so originally the aggregate award was 2.8 million, and 2.24 of that went to NextAir. That doesn't change, right? So the only thing left to deal with is Matheson and Airgas. Matheson's award was 280, but through the review and the budgeting for this award, 27,000 was reduced. So that leaves us with a net increase of 253 that's laid out in the table there that's on the screen right now. So Airgas's original award was 280 plus the additional budget of 253 brings us to the 533 for Airgas and their overall award. And then our total award amount for both contracts drops from 2.8 million to 2.773 million. So, I mean, that's the overall logistics of how we changed from one to the other. As for the price increase, there's if you could scroll up a little bit, I think we had the delta in price on here on the screen. Let's see if I see it there.
Last paragraph.
Yeah, it's kind of goofy looking at it on WebEx here. Doesn't show. Okay, there we go. So the 181 to the 237, in their unit price delta, that delta between the two, 56,000, if you spread that across 5 years, that's the percentage increase that they're going to see in the overall pricing. But again, that's based on consumption. We budget a little bit higher, so the consumption may be a little bit higher. So around 10,500, 10,800 per year, I guess, is the aggregate increase. But again, it's all going to be based on consumption.
So thank you. That really helps. That puts it in a much better perspective. I mean, we're talking about, like I said, 56,000-ish over 5 years in comparison to $2.7 million. Yeah, it's not much. Thanks. That's where I was going. Is this a big deal or not?
Gotcha.
And it's not a
Yep.
big. So thanks. Or not a big deal in my mind. Not a big deal in my mind. Committee, you do what you think's best. I'm not trying to look at anybody. I'm just trying to think of questions that my boss may ask me. So thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Any other questions? And Ted, I appreciate your questions because it also helps me frame the emails that I send to your boss. So thank you. I'll pass it back to the chair.
Thank you, Jenny. May I get a motion to approve award item 7?
Sean Connor, so moved.
I'll second it.
All right. We have a motion from Sean Connor and a second from Todd Skinner. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed, motion is adopted. Jenny, I'll pass it back over to you for our last award, item 8.
Thank you. Through the chair, Award 8 is a contract increase. This is for our 1 MGD water purification facility. So this is for the design, the construction, integration, and interface, test, checkout, and startup of 1 million gallon per day water purification facility. This is done through a progressive design build, so you'll see multiple awards come through for this particular project. You've seen to date one award that was originally awarded in January of 2020 to the Haskell Company as our awardee, and that original award was about $800,000. This is the second award that we're bringing to kind of follow on to that, and this recommended amount is $5,223,357. I'll go into a little bit more detail about what that includes, but we're looking at this project to be completed in January of 2024. That's our proposed estimate. The project, as I said, will be using progressive design, design build delivery, so several phases. So get ready to see this one multiple times. The preliminary work that could be done before our site was finalized was what we did with that $800,000. So we did as much as we could up to the point of not knowing where our site was. And so we worked through that. The preliminary work was completed, and then and back in June of 2020, JEA suspended work on the project until our integrated resource or water resource plan could be completed, which it has been. And I'll also note that in September of 2021, the JEA Board of Directors approved the purchase of the real estate. So now we are coming back to you all knowing that knowing where the site is, one, and then two, that integrated water resource plan is complete. So we're ready to move forward. So this contract increase in the award amount of about $5.2 million is to include our pre-construction services, 100% and 100% design services. So this is kind of leading up to finishing all of what we think we're going to pay Haskell for the design work. It's anticipated during the process, we will bring several interim guaranteed maximum prices to you guys for equipment pre-purchase and early construction work. So this again is what you would be approving is what we think the overall engineering costs are going to be. And then as we come kind of intermittently, as we need to purchase equipment, pre-sale, all that, we will, before construction, begins, we'll start to buy some of that equipment, and you'll see those come in. As a note, at 90% design, so when Haskell gets to 90% design, we'll establish a final GMP for the rest of the work for construction, everything else. And upon acceptance and subsequent approvals from you all, the construction will commence. If JEA and Haskell can't agree to a final GMP, then Haskell will complete the design work and the contract will end. And so there's, along the way, basically we're paying for the engineering and then any pre-equipment purchases. But the construction piece, if we can't agree, would end and we would bid that out separately. So there's lots of off-ramps that we can take as we go through this process. And I think I will ask the business to comment on the budget. So what we had budgeted originally for engineering and what ultimately we are paying is quite substantially different, about a 56% increase. So I'd like for you guys to comment on that. I will note that the overall project budget for this, so engineering, equipment, construction, all of it, is about $40 million. So keeping that in mind, knowing that we have the full budget and the project budget to work with, if you guys could just comment on the engineering piece of the budget, that'd be helpful.
Jenny, this is Beth DeMayo. As
Hey,
far
Beth.
as the budget, the original estimate shown was the 2019 project conceptual estimate. Since then, we've redefined scope, and that estimate was more based off of our typical percentages of direct construction costs. We've also have gone back, and after the preliminary work that was done prior to the project being paused, allowed us to define, more as far as what we need to do and kind of how to proceed from there. So the overall project budget has also, increased since the 2019 estimate. But then in regards to that, so has the design level effort, and then we've, working with Haskell as far as what that scope and fee actually is. So that's really what the disparity is between our original estimate for, for this versus what we have now. We have a lot clearer and very defined scope of work. And the 2019 number was a little more conceptual and percentage based. And then of course the construction value has gone up, several million from when that 2019 estimate was established.
Thanks, Beth. So when you guys do that, was our budget overall, you said it all increased, was that done prior to negotiations with Haskell, or was that after? Just trying to better understand what budget number we should put there, if we should use the 2019 budget number, or if you guys had reviewed this and looked at this prior to negotiations and we knew that we were going to be paying more and adjusted prior to. Does that make sense?
Yes, I think as far as moving forward, well, we have a defined site now. I know most of the work that was done prior to us pausing it, we hadn't solidified where this facility was going to be constructed. I think from an estimate perspective, things have been developing on, from a scope perspective. 2019, we weren't initially looking at the monitoring and injection wells. We just made that decision, prior to re-engaging Haskell. So we've had, added some scope from what we weren't originally looking at doing back in 2019.
Okay. So did you go through budget and update that what you thought the estimate would be for the engineering work, or did we just do that after negotiations and kind of shift everything once we went through the process?
Jenny, this is Dan. Sorry. The overall project budget was increased through the budget process, but the last formal estimate that we have is that 2019 estimate, which is why that is what is on the award document, because otherwise, we don't have any sort of backup to show the committee, because that was the last formal estimate done. But the budget was increased during the negotiation process once we realized that it was going to cost more than we originally thought.
Okay, thank you. Any questions on that? I know that through these progressive design builds, it's a little interesting kind of how early you start and as you progress through and the process for that.
This is Jordan. Can I ask a question?
Sure.
There's a comment on here about differing site conditions and the pipelines needing to be brought to and from the site. And maybe Ryan Popko can answer. I want to make sure we're not talking about the reclaim main, because I think that was one of the reasons we liked this site was its proximity. Does this refer more to the potable and the wastewater coming to this site, since they're really?
Yeah, Jordan, this is Ryan Popko. That was the benefit. So the site ended up being cheaper than other options, and the proximity of the reclaim line was a benefit of this. The piping is for the other connections required.
Got it. Thanks, Ryan.
And to piggyback on what Beth was saying, the biggest change in the scope from the previous iteration to this is now we're including the construction of that exploratory well.
So I have one question. So what is the estimate now? Is it 40 million? What is that the best number we have, knowing what we know now, or is that the 2019 number?
This is Beth DeMayo. Our current overall proposed budget that we've sent to capital budget planning has been approved. It's like at 44 million. Our direct
Okay.
costs are right around 40 million, and then we have the JEA indirect costs for this
Okay.
project.
Okay, perfect. I didn't know if it was a $40 million project or if it was a $65 million project. So I would just, thank you. That's where I was going. I appreciate it.
And I think for Ted's benefit too, Jordan, your real estate costs are wrapped up in that as well, correct? It's like an overall total budget.
Yeah, my understanding is that's inclusive of the roughly 3.3 million for real estate.
Thank you. These are some of the questions I get post-award, so it's helpful to hear from the group as a whole when we have everyone together.
Jenny,
Any
it's
other
Joe.
questions?
One other quick question, it's Joe. Could you put a middle initial for Paul McElroy? I'm assuming that's not Paul E. McElroy. I know it's a public document, it might raise some eyebrows if people think, oh, awarding business to Paul McElroy. Thank you. It's just optics.
You're welcome. Yes, yeah. If we can
Another
get that
question
information.
avoided.
Yeah, if we can,
It just stuck out.
I appreciate that.
In neon.
Yes, thank you. I appreciate that. Dan, if you could track that down, that would be helpful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else? I like where everybody's mind is going. Thank you for the support. I'll pass it back to the chair.
Thank you, Jenny. May I get a motion to approve award item 8 based on the amendments mentioned?
Jordan Pope, move to approve.
Joe Orfano, second.
Thank you. We have a motion from Jordan Pope and a second from Joe Orfano. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? And motion is adopted. All right, so the entire agenda is approved for October 14, 2021. Is there any other business to come before the awards committee? All right, seeing none, we're adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. This is easier when everybody's pulling the rope the same way, so I appreciate it.
Sure.